morning. Good morning, everyone. This is always that point of a conference that I just really don't like having responsibility for, which is to interrupt all of you. I've been trying to eavesdrop on some of your conversations. They're just terrific, and I'm sure it'll continue to be that way today. It really is inspiring. I had a chance to say hello to several of you, not nearly enough of you yet, but it's inspiring to see so many educators, administrators. I know we have students here, higher education advocates, community partners, really to just gather this one time a year and really talk about pressing issues facing higher education. It's really humbling to me. I said hello to somebody and said, hey, I think it was Nicole. I said, yeah, I knew you were going to be here today. And I think you said, oh, you did? And I said, yeah, because I looked at the list. And so many of you I know by first name, and just grateful that you're here and really grateful for the work that you do each day. As you know, the theme for this year's conference is Investing in the Future, Opportunities to Afford Post-Secondary Education and Training. I think it's a very appropriate topic for the day. The Indiana Commission for Higher Education, and especially our partners, have been working hard to address Indiana's concerns surrounding affordability in higher education. I'm not going to go through all the initiatives today because you really want to hear from Justin shortly. But all of you have been working hard at that in partnership with our team. We took a crucial step, as many of you know, around this endeavor last year by partnering with an incredible research firm, you're going to hear more about this today, Heart and Mind Strategies, to survey Hoosiers' perceptions and realities of higher education, with, I would add, very generous support from our friends at the Lilly Endowment. To no one's surprise, the affordability of college was the top concern of all groups that were surveyed: high school students, young adult students, adult learners, parents of adults, students, parents of younger students. Looking at the national and local media, it is really easy to understand why this perception has spread across the country. The messaging across these platforms, local media, national media, social media, has been that college is unattainable as a from a financial standpoint, and that higher education is unattainable. These aren't in my notes, but I'll take 30 seconds to ad-lib here. Some of you have heard me talk about a conversation I had a couple of years ago with a writer at the Wall Street Journal, somebody whose writing I really like. And he was calling because he had seen that we were making a lot of noise about the decline of the college going rate. And about halfway into that conversation, Doug said to me, "And why do you think that is, Chris?" And I kind of laughed, and he said, "What's funny?" And I said, "You do read your paper, right?" At about the same time, the Wall Street Journal was highlighting stories that are the unicorns, so was the New York Times. I said, "Doug, y'all are painting higher education as people who get some weird degree from USC or Columbia, allow me, a graduate degree, and they owe somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000, and they couldn't find a part-time job pouring coffee in Indiana. Am I close?" He said, well. And I said, no. That's the story you paint. Because in Indiana, if a student has debt from undergrad, it's less than $28,000 a year. And by the way, the wage premium between a high school diploma and a bachelor's degree in our state is 84%. So help me here with the narrative, right? So those are the things we're facing. Nevertheless, though, we have got to keep the pressure on around affordability, and we know Justin is going to talk about this, which is why a number of you, in partnership with all of us, are pushing on it. Whether it was the expansion of 21st Century Scholars, whether it's pre-admission, whether it's so that every high school in Indiana has the Indiana College Corps, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's what we're talking about today. So Heart and Mind Strategies, they did the work. Heart and Mind really dug into these data points. We wanted to understand really well how Hoosiers really perceive these costs around college. They unveiled something we thought was absolutely astonishing. Indiana's residents, parents, students alike, overinflate their belief of the cost of college by about 100%. Wow. At four-year institutions, respondents believed that the sticker price of 1 year with tuition and fees at a four-year institution was around $20,000. It's actually just shy of $10,000 on average. and did the same at our two-year institutions where the estimation was $11,000 for tuition and fees, and it's closer to $4,600. So we do have a perception problem. And again, I would say Indiana's doing a really good job on keeping pressure on the cost. So, by the way, if you didn't know, it's 6th best in the nation at holding down tuition and fees for the past 12 years. That's pretty good. And by the way, I would say West Lafayette under Mitch Daniels is the one who catalyzed that, but every institution's been doing its heavy lifting in that process. Of course, we know that the sticker price isn't the price, that generally speaking, the net price is about half of the sticker. So if you like math at all like me, and this is not a tough equation, this is the estimation, this is the sticker price, and that at about 1 to 3, 1 to 4 is the actual net price. So we've got some work we've got to do. 82% of students receive some form of financial aid in our state. Federal, state, institutional grants and scholarship, reducing tuition and other costs. However, perhaps, I think many of you know I'm a hopeful person, perhaps the most interesting thing about this research and really revealing counterintuitive to this misunderstanding about the cost is that Hoosiers value higher education. To me, that's the headline. Around 80% of high school students and their parents believe continuing education beyond high school is worth the investment. That's the good news. That's what I really want to make sure that you frame today up with, that people believe in it, they see the value in it. We've got to figure out how to, one, keep the costs down, keep pressing on it, but also helping folks really understand what those opportunities look like. Despite all of this, though, and we've talked about this previously, the Indiana college going rate up until 2022 had declined by 15 points from 68% to 53% in a decade. We weren't talking about that much. We're talking about it a lot today and have been for the past couple of years. You know, I think many of you know the strategic plan for the Commission for Higher Education we frame as the HOPE agenda. It's fairly simple. Justin and I were talking about it at breakfast today. It stands for Hoosier Opportunities and Possibilities Through Education. I dare say that the folks in this room and what you have that led you to this room, allowed you in those doors and at these tables, are the same things that other Hoosiers are seeking. They'd like to be in the room and at the table. And much of that has been precipitated by the educations that we've all been so fortunate to receive. Eye on the ball there. So at the Commission, as we implement strategy, we try to ask these 3 questions all the time. Brooke, who leads our a whole host of things from finance to business intelligence, and et cetera, really helps us live this in our organization. The data is interesting, but that's the what. The next question we have to ask, and that's for insight, is so what? I think the research has helped us do that. And then the really delicious question is now what? What, so what, and now what? We wanted to know those things. And you're going to hear a lot about the what and the so what today, and it's up to all of you smart people in this room to help us figure out now what. We're going to cover a wide range of topics, including supporting of the 21st Century Scholars Program, saving with Indiana 529 accounts, communicating with parents and guardians, and much more, to do that much more and much more effectively. So, among other things, besides listening and really engaging in these sessions today, I hope you all network. You are just some brilliant people in this room. I think each time I talk with one of you, I'm just picking your brain for whatever the latest is. So please do that with your colleagues. Maybe even switch tables if you know the folks too well at your table here today. And most importantly, take everything you learned today back to your institutions or your organizations. Indiana just can't move forward, and we can't achieve the goals that we seek without all of you engaging in it. I believe, especially by evidence of this room, hope does grow in Indiana, and as our team would tell you, I'm going to challenge all of you. It's Wednesday morning. I'll give you some leeway. Take something back from this conference if you find something worthy in it, and I'm going to give you a lot of time here. By Monday morning, decide that you're going to do something with it. So you've got all the way till Monday morning. And I really mean that. Take something, implement it, try it, test it, research it, ask somebody about it. So now I'm going to be quiet and get the main event started here. We are just so fortunate to have Justin Draeger join us. He and I had a quick bite of breakfast and some coffee earlier this morning, and I shared with him he has some fans in this audience from the work he's done over the years, and I think you'll really enjoy hearing from him. Justin currently, and for about the past year or so, has been serving as Senior Vice President of Affordability. Don't you like that? Wouldn't it be fun just to wake up every day and think about that? Affordability at the Strada Education Foundation. In this role, he focuses on addressing barriers to an affordable education after high school while reducing costs, increasing awareness about financial aid, and supporting state strategies like ours to better connect financial aid to talent and workforce development. Justin previously spent more than 15 years as the president and Chief Executive Officer of the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators, where many of you know him from, and where he served as a prominent voice for student financial aid issues. He brings more than 2 decades of student financial aid experience and leadership to this conference. And by the way, he and his wife have 2 college students right now, so he's personally very aware of the challenges that many parents and students face in navigating all of this. So please join me in a warm Hoosier round of applause for our guest, Justin Draeger.
Good morning. Thanks, Chris. Y'all are very lucky to have Chris, who's so passionate about opportunity and possibilities in education, and it was a pleasure getting to speak with you this morning. As he mentioned, my wife and I have 2 kids in college right now, one at Michigan State University, and I wish we had someone in Indiana. We don't. One at Virginia Tech. We have at our house sort of an informal committee of household appropriations. And if I were to try to pinpoint who's filling what role, I would say our college students are like the chair people of the committee. They're also the chief lobbyists on that committee. My wife is the swing vote, and I'm the chief fiscal officer, reminding everyone we do not have unlimited resources. And like every week, there's like a new topic. Last week, we saw our son in Blacksburg, Virginia, on spring break as we were in the Blue Ridge Mountains, beautiful country. And the topics were why the Virginia Tech meal plan is not enough for our son, who needs to eat more. We also considered last week why investing in another vehicle is a good investment for him and us. And of course, everyone just looks at my wife because, again, she is the swing vote on the committee. We did invest in more food and not in the vehicle, if you're wondering how the votes went. Let me do a quick poll of this audience just to see where we're all situated before we begin this conversation on affordability. How many in this room would consider themselves a first-generation college student or graduate? Okay, maybe take a look around just to see who has their hands raised. All right, good. How many folks in this room have supported someone, including yourselves, while going or pursuing post-secondary education? Can I see that? Okay, take a look around the room. How many of you have ever attended post-secondary education part-time? Okay. How many of you have attended or worked at a community college? All right, that's fantastic, and that actually is much higher than a lot of the rooms that I speak in each one of those categories. And I specifically hit those categories because a lot of times when we talk about affordability or we talk about college access, we have in our minds a specific picture of a traditional, I'll put in quotes, student. And that is a student who's graduating high school and thinking about post-secondary education. And we sometimes, not on purpose, but we exclude what really is now the majority of students, which are adult learners who might not be pursuing a traditional education. They might be working full-time. They likely are attending part-time. They're pursuing a non-traditional path. And so we are all situated differently or thinking about affordability differently based on our own experiences, where we're currently working, our current situations, and that should add to the diversity of discussion that we have today, I hope, as we think about affordability and the traditional or non-traditional students that we're all hoping to serve. Just to tell you a little bit about me and where I'm situated, I grew up not too far from here, Toledo, Ohio. Any Ohioans in the room? Okay, not a lot of enthusiasm, but thank you for your solidarity. Toledo, Ohio, and I grew up with two parents who provided me everything that I would need in life, all the necessities, but they were also wrapped up in the auto industry, as a lot of folks are in the Midwest, and the ups and mostly downs in the late 70s and early 80s of the auto industry. And at a very young age, we had to move back in with my grandparents so my parents could find their financial footing. And maybe not the best of times for my parents, but as a child, the best of times, because as an only, the adult-to-kid ratio was 4-to-1 where I grew up, which was fantastic. And I attended Lark Elementary School, which is up there on the screen. Lark Elementary School was also the school where my grandmother was a custodian. And I learned some really important lessons that have basically infused all of the work that I've done at NASFA, where I came from as a supporter and spokesperson for financial aid administrators, to today, where I work on affordability issues. 3 things I learned at Lark Elementary School. The first thing I learned was that relationships and community defy all other class structures. My grandmother, as I said, was a custodian there, and she was friends with teachers. She was friends with other custodial staff, principals. It meant that as a kid, I really could not get away with anything. It also meant that everyone looked out for everyone else. That class, where you stood in the community, meant nothing. It really meant that everyone was friends with everyone in that school. The second thing I learned was that leadership comes from anywhere. One of the other custodians at Lark Elementary was Mr. Hagman. Mr. Hagman was also the mayor of our town. Your job did not define whether you could provide leadership. Leadership was defined by action, not by title or job title. And number 3, I learned that what education should be. At Lark, it was a place where every child mattered. It was, dignity was assumed, and from a very young age, an educational pathway was laid out for every child. And even if you didn't know what it was, there was a post-secondary pathway that was laid out for everyone. That could have been a skilled trade, it could have been an apprenticeship, it could have been college. But I can remember as early as 3rd grade being told, if you don't know what you want to be for career day, here's a gown for a post-secondary graduation ceremony that is in your future. That's what Lark instilled to me. In 2012, that school was unfortunately tore down to make room for a new school. It was quite old, but the superintendent, as a fundraising whiz, sold those bricks to graduates. I bought several, and they sit on my desk at home and at work today as a reminder of what education can be. And my wife and I are both first-generation, 4-year graduates, first-generation graduate degree recipients. And we think about, just like the majority of people in this room who raise their hands, we think about ways that we can give back, and affordability and access are one of the ways that we do it. My wife is in the math department at the Northern Virginia Community College and thinks about access, and specifically in the remedial math area where she teaches and tutors. This idea of education to opportunity is part of the foundation's vision and mission of where I work today, Strada Education Foundation, if you're wondering who we are, headquartered right here in Indianapolis, is the work in which we're involved. And it's really about trying to find that pathway. And if we're talking about affordability, I want to pause for just a moment and sort of ask this question, which I'm not going to poll you on, but I sort of want you to center yourself and ask and answer this question. Is college affordable? And when I go and ask this question to groups of folks, particularly who work closely in post-secondary education, I usually get three answers. I get some in the room who say yes, some in the room who say no, and when specifically I'm talking to post-secondary ed folks, or folks who are enmeshed in post-secondary ed, I get a lot of folks who refuse to answer the question because you know too much. You want to answer the question with a question. Those questions are usually, who are we talking about? What income levels? What degree? What's the ROI? What type of school are they attending? And that's when I know I'm talking to a room of post-secondary ed folks. So I know this is a very simple question. We're going to try to answer that question in a couple ways this morning. And these slides will all be available to you so you can refer to them later. I'm going to try to move through these at a pretty good clip because we have a couple other questions I want to try to answer as well. At Strada, we have tried to answer this question in a simple way using basically two variables. The first variable is using net price. This is hopefully a term most of us are familiar with, but as a quick review, the net price is the total cost of attendance at any institution for any program. So that would be tuition and fees, of course, those are the direct expenses, but it would also include any indirect expenses or non-billable expenses, so cost of living, transportation, technology expenses. That would be the total cost of attendance. And if you're doing financial aid, these are legitimate expenses that go into any financial aid budget. So your total cost of attendance, books, supplies, housing, food, transportation, all goes in there. You subtract from that any grants or scholarships or discounts at the institution. Loans don't go in there. Work study does not go in there. Any form of self-help aid or aid that has to be repaid is not in this equation. These are grants and scholarships that actually reduce the cost of the total cost of attendance. Then you are left with the net price. So that's the first variable, net price. The second variable then is your hours of work. So this is for each state, the typical wage based on a state-specific median hourly wage for college students who would be working in that state. We get that from a survey that's done in each state. You can look at the underlying methodology if you were to go out to the Strada website and look at the State Opportunity Index. We actually have the whole methodology that's included in this survey. It's largely influenced by the minimum wage in the state, although it is not the minimum wage, but it is largely influenced by the minimum wage in those states. And then we look at, so let's assume that college students can work full-time in the summer and part-time during the school year. So using those two variables, net price and their wages for a college student, how much would they have to work in order to afford the net price? And then we try to look at, are those schools affordable? So we apply those two variables at every state across the country, and if a college student would have to work less than 10 hours during the school year, we would put them in green and say they are a leading state. This map right here is a blended rate of both 4-year and 2-year institutions in the state. So you can see that we have two states that we would call leading, where students in those states, on average, given the net price and how much they earn, would have to work less than 10 hours per week to afford schools, public schools, in those states. Then we have states in blue where students would have to work on average part-time between 10 and 20 hours per week. And you can see Indiana falls in those. These states are doing, I should add, exceptionally well, leading and advanced. Then you go down further, and students in yellow, or states in yellow, students would have to work between 20 and 30 hours, and then more than 30 hours would be foundational. We break this down further in this next slide for four-year public institutions. And you can see on this slide that if we were just looking at four-year publics, we don't have any states in leading. We have 5 states that are in advanced. We have roughly 14 states that are in developing. If we go just to two-year schools, you can see that we are, as a country, doing much, much better. And Indiana is in leading status when we're looking at two-year publics. We don't do private institutions in any of these calculations. Some of that has to do with data. A lot of it has to do with 70% of students in this country are enrolled in public institutions. So we're also just looking at where most students are attending post-secondary schools. So that is one category of affordability, or one definition of affordability that I would propose. We have to have somewhere to start. There are some limitations with that definition. One limitation that I might throw out is that it doesn't look at income bands. So if we were discussing sort of public policy, which we're not going to get into all the, sort of categories of affordability in the time we have today, I would just say most economists would say we would want to put our money where our money can really make the difference for the most amount of people. And for that to happen, we would want to focus on those with the lowest incomes. So another way to look at affordability would be by income band. In this instance, I went out to Indiana Flagship and used the college scorecard, which is available at the U.S. Department of Education website. The nice thing about the college scorecard is that any educator, student, or family can go out to this website, they can plug in any school, and they can see a lot of different things, but as it relates to cost, they can see the average annual net price, which we just defined, which at Indiana University in Bloomington is $15,000. That's not income dependent. You can see that's just the average net cost. But over on the right, then, the college scorecard also breaks out by income. So in these income bands, for a family making less than $30,000, the average net price at Indiana is actually $6,800. For a family making between $30,000 and roughly $50,000, it's actually only $7,600 on average, and so on and so forth. So the nice thing about the scorecard is you can actually break it down even further. So as we think about affordability, we should be answering, affordable for who? This chart is available by the Institute for Higher Education Policy, and this actually looks at net price over time by family income. The line on the bottom is for public two-year institutions, and you can see the average net price hasn't changed all that much going back to 2008, 2009. For families, this whole chart is for families making less than $30,000. And I only show it to illustrate the point that for these lowest income families, the average net price at a public two-year hasn't really changed all that much. The next line, that red line, is for public 4 years. And again, for families making less than $30,000, the average price at a public 4-year institution, this is nationally, is less than $10,000 a year. And in fact, in the last 5 years, has actually decreased for these families. That's not because schools have lowered their tuition. It's because we've seen increases in both federal aid and, in some states, increases in state investment. And then you can go on up the line and you can see for private nonprofits and for-profits. The question I want to ask here, and maybe this is the wrong group to ask this to, is how many of you have read headlines that have said the cost of college is going down? Okay, wrong group. Yeah, okay, a couple people in the front who are paying very close attention. There has been one article of note in the last couple months. It was in The Atlantic. The headline was something like, "The best kept secret in higher education." We're going to circle back around to this in just a moment. I want to show two more charts that are Indiana specific. If you look at annual net price by family income, and this one is produced by Strata, we actually look at states and we break out these lines by family income. That green line is for families making less than $30,000. The next line, which is gray, this might be hard to read on this, but again, you'll have access to the slides, is $30,000 to $48,000, and then that sort of magenta, that teal line is $48,000 to $75,000. But we order them by states based on net price. And what you'd see here for four-year public institutions is that Indiana is leading the pack here. Again, if you look at two-year institutions, Indiana, again, is near the front. What's the takeaway from all of this? The takeaway isn't the work is done. I think the takeaway in this room is Indiana has a very strong foundation and more work to do. So, speaking of those headlines, I guess the question I want to pose to you, and this builds on Commissioner Lowry's opening remarks, is do students and families think college is affordable? And there, when I ask this question, the response I usually get is almost unanimous, which is no. No, students and families, you can show them the chart that, hey, great news, the net price of college is actually going down slightly. And how many people in here work in either enrollment management or financial aid? Okay, good. These are my people. Good to see you. Every person who works in financial aid, when they go into a party, not at work, they have to make a decision whether they are going to mention that they work in financial aid or college admissions or enrollment management. And the reason they have to decide that is because they know if they enter that conversation, that is the conversation they will be having the rest of the night. I also have to make those decisions at parties. Because most students and families will tell you, college is not affordable. And for a lot of students and families, it's not. Because if you make less than $30,000 and you say, great news, the net price is only $6,000 to $7,000, that's a lot of money for someone making less than $30,000 a year. That's not something we can bat an eye at. But there's also a perception issue. There's a trust issue embedded in this as well. We'll talk a little bit about that in just a moment. But here's some of the data that Strata has run through some survey work that we conducted last November. This was a voter review survey that we did the very week of the last election. This was among Trump and Harris voters, second week in November. What we found, and this was a representative sample, 77% of Americans say college is not affordable. So that's almost 4 out of 5 saying it's not affordable. Almost 9 out of 10 said that a 4-year public institution is too expensive. Half of Americans then, we asked them to move a slider and asked them to say, well, how much do you think it costs to attend a 4-year in-state public institution? Half of them overestimated how much it costs. And 1 out of 5, 20%, dramatically overestimated what it costs. Missed the mark by more than $20,000. So we do have some major perception issues. And here's where the reality is. This last bullet. This was not a Strata survey. This was one done by Lumina and Gallup. For people who actually do drop out or stop out of school, cost is the number one leading reason. In fact, if you looked at the top 8 reasons, sometimes it's childcare, sometimes it's health or health expense related. 5 out of the top 8 reasons ultimately are financial. They might cite other reasons, but they are tangential to a financial issue. So it is perception and reality of cost. We also asked these voters another question that was getting at one item, which was grit. This is, sort of built into sort of the story of America, which is how much grit do you have? Like, if you have enough grit, can you stick it out? Can you find a way? We're providing opportunity. And what we found was that for the majority of people who answered this survey, it really did come down to, it doesn't matter how much grit you have. It's just become too darn expensive. It's not a matter of grit. It's a matter of, I don't have the money. I can't afford school and live. And so grit, while it may be a core American value, it's just not enough. And that's what most Americans believe. We also are right now in the middle of some focus group work. I want to show you, we have 3 minutes here, I want to show you what some students and families are saying right now in these focus groups that we've been running. And we asked them 3 questions. The first question was, why are you pursuing a post-secondary education? The second question was, we explained to them that schools sometimes, mostly private nonprofit, but there are publics who also do this from time to time, pursue strategies on pricing called tuition discounting, where they have a sticker price, but most students at that institution, or at least a large number of them, pay below sticker price. That's called tuition discounting. And just ask them what they thought of that practice. And number 3, we said, if you could talk directly to a college president, what would you want that college president to know? Okay, so let's see if everybody pray to the technology gods for just a moment, and we'll see if we can get this to work.
With college, I'm hoping to have a higher pay and an easier access to specialized fields.
Attending college and obtaining a degree, I hope to be able to pursue my dream of going to medical school and becoming an anesthesiologist.
I mean, first of all, I really want to do accounting, so if I wanted to get into something like that, you have to have a degree no matter what.
I'm going to college to be a music teacher because music is my special interest.
I think attending college gives my child an opportunity to pursue her dreams.
So I'm hoping for a degree in finance. I'm hoping for loans and stuff so I can be able to pay for and get it.
So I actually did not know that most students do not pay the sticker price. I thought this majority of colleges that the students will pay the sticker price, and I kind of feel like this is like false advertisement in a way, because like I get deterred away by many colleges by the sticker price.
I feel like it's common knowledge that most people don't actually pay the sticker price.
I did not know that very few students actually pay the sticker price.
I did semi-realize this. I don't think it's fair. I think it's very convoluted.
It seems kind of like the way that companies on Black Friday will mark something up right before the sale and then mark it way down to what they actually want you to pay for it so that they can say, oh, look at how much money you're saving.
I did know there are some schools where students don't pay full sticker price.
So I didn't necessarily know that it was called a sticker price per se, but I had an idea that was what was occurring.
A little confusing, but after a while you get it. My whole
objection I would say is why the cost is so high to begin with.
I did not know about the sticker price. I do think it's an okay, fair way to price college.
College is a business, and so the best way they can make the most money, they're going to do it.
Instead of boast on our website about like 93% of students getting financial aid, like wouldn't it be more easier to just say what price it is?
It's just hard because I don't always know if like a financial aid calculator is going to be accurate, if I'm going to have all the info I need, or if it's including what loans and scholarships I'm eligible for. So yeah.
There's a lot about the experience and cost and stuff that people just simply aren't aware of.
I think it has gotten overcomplicated, and there must be a simpler way to still make it fair and equitable for everybody.
You know, if I got the chance to speak to a college president about, just overall costs and pricing for this, for just, education in general, I would really want to know, are these prices for profit, or are these your bare minimum prices? Is this what gets y'all just enough?
There are so many things that I wanted my daughter to get out of college, and a degree and a career is just one of many things.
Not going to college and not getting that degree would limit those opportunities you get for jobs, and that is not a life I want to have. Some people might, but that's not what I want.
We could do an entire session just on these focus groups. So I have spent my entire career since 2000, so that's almost 25 years, working at or on behalf of institutions. So having worked for institutions, I would say institutions, all of the ones I've worked for and on behalf of, are doing what they can to help students achieve their dreams. I would also say that institutions are also beholden to incentives that have created really complicated processes for students. And when you listen to the students and families talk, and now having gone through this myself with 2 of my students and a third who is on deck, I think what we are coming to realize is that these complicating factors, processes, systems, they don't, which we've sort of known this for a while, they don't just impede access and affordability and perceptions. What we are starting to learn and hopefully internalize is they are actually starting to destroy the very trust that we need from the students and families that we are hoping to enroll, educate, and help move on to the next level of their careers, their dreams, their jobs. And so if I were to try to pull out from what I'm hearing, and we have a lot more research to do with these students and families, but what I'm hearing is a fear of debt. The terms that we hear from these students and families are crippling debt, massive burden, lifetime debt, suffocating debt. These are the terms they're using. Clear and transparent pricing wins the day. The difference between sticker and net, it makes sense to me because I've lived it for 25 years. Does not make sense to students and families. Predictability. People want assurance that the price they get today will be the price they get in their second year and in their third year and the fourth year. That creates a lot of complexity on the school side. Not to mention state appropriations, federal appropriations, but that's what students and families are wanting and hoping for. An ROI focus, particularly from parents, but even a growing number of students. And they want to trust their institutions. On the other end of their degree, students love their institutions, but up front they feel a significant amount of fear and trepidation. So what I would say is the school who gets this right, this is the messaging. If I were a consultant right now walking into a school, this is the messaging I would say that in practice and messaging a school would have to deliver. We hate debt as much as you. That's why we can ensure that students and parents take on as little as possible. We guarantee your tuition won't change over the course of your program. There will be no surprise fees. Can you deliver that? That's the million-dollar question. But that's what students and families are saying, not explicitly, but that's what we hear. And they want to give their trust. But they're just looking for the right schools that they can give it to. And on the other end, they love their schools. But up front, they have a lot of fear and trepidation. This is my final question that I give to the audiences that, again, I'm not going to poll you. How many of you would rebuild if you could start from scratch, scorched earth, rebuild our higher ed financing system from scratch, how many of you would rebuild the exact system we have today? This is almost unanimous as well. Nobody. We have a very disjointed system. A federal system that's usually paying vouchers directly to students with some campus-based funding mixed in. That's not super flexible. We have states that are giving appropriations largely to institutions, public institutions with some state direct aid programs. And then we have students and families who don't understand how much they have to contribute. A very opaque and complicated federal form and system that's gotten simpler, but is very opaque to students and families. And then we have private scholarship providers outside of that who are also delivering aid. So here's how at least we're thinking about affordability at our foundation. At a 30,000-foot level, we're thinking about how we create a system that has clear outcomes for students and families to take away some of that fear, that provides quality coaching as early as middle school and high school, that is focused on affordability, that has real embedded work-based learning in their post-secondary education careers, and is aligned with employer needs. That's a pretty tall order, but that's the vision. And as far as the affordability investment blueprint, it really comes down to this idea of families would know, or we'd have a system where a student understands the costs, they know how they'll pay for it, and they receive the return on their investment. How we are investing on the philanthropic side is improving price transparency, reducing time to completion. The number one expense for post-secondary ed isn't the tuition bill. It's not the housing costs. It's taking themselves out of the labor market where they're not earning a paycheck. It's the opportunity cost. That doesn't show up on any tuition bill. But they're not earning. Working adults understand this very well. College students normally don't. Traditional 18-year-olds usually don't. Actually reducing costs and putting money towards need-based aid, aligning systems better, including our employers, to see when and where they'll show up to defray costs, and redefining student and family contributions. Now, we have several ways in that we are investing in these programs, ranging from making college costs more transparent, making sure that students can get out of school at a more reasonable time frame, focusing on federal, state, local investments, and involving employers, need-based aid, and helping students and families find dignified, meaningful ways that they can also contribute, even if that's a small contribution. They want to be part of the solution, and getting them involved early. I also want to just give a big kudos to Indiana. There is a lot nationally we can learn from Indiana. I'm not going to go through all of this list, but I think it's important that you all know that there are many states who are learning from what you all are doing. Ones that I do want to pull out, though, that one that didn't make this list is your pre-admissions program that's just started coming online. I'd say that this is sort of nascent, but this idea of telling students early on that you are pre-admitted to a whole score of colleges and universities in the state, and then building on that and telling them, and here's the financing plan to help you pay for it. That might be the next step in telling students you are directly or pre-admitted and now we have a pathway to help you pay for it. Your 21st Century Scholars Program, Degree in 3 is going to be relatively new, but we finally come around to the idea and have research that shows students don't suffer when we reduce the amount of time it actually takes to get a bachelor's degree. And in Indiana, dual enrollment and doing it equitably. You all have sort of set the standard there and making sure it's reaching all students, particularly rural students. And then your universal FAFSA requirements. One other thing I just want to note that we could continue to use help on, Strata, in partnership with several institutional trade associations, launched the College Cost Transparency Initiative. It launched 18 months ago, totally institutionally led, no legislation or federal requirement needed. Within 18 months, we have almost 700 institutions that all agreed to rely on the same definitions and standards for their financial aid offers, so that they all use the same terminology. Students and families, if they're attending one of these institutions, will get aid offers that all use the same terminology, math, and definitions. Those, by the way, 700 schools enroll almost 7 million students. In Indiana, these are all the institutions who have submitted aid offers to the governing board, who reviewed it and said, yes, your aid offer meets our requirements. So this is not an on my honor. This is an actual submission, and you get a gold seal of approval. These are the institutions who've already met the standard in Indiana, and we're always looking to grow this list. Again, at Strata, this is our mission, and I think it aligns with what I've looked at your agenda and all of us are committed to. It's that affordability, and an affordable education will do what the students and families said in these focus groups. Said simply, one student just said, an affordable education allows me to focus on learning. That's it. It's the type of community and state and country that we want to build. To me, affordability, it's more than spreadsheets, it's more than a math equation, it's really a value statement. It's a value statement about what we hold dear, and I could have asked you a couple other questions other than the main ones I put on the screen, but the question maybe I should have asked is just, do we all agree that talent is everywhere? Do we agree that talent is found in every zip code, in every school, in every student? And if we do, then we want to provide opportunity in every zip code, in every school, in every home. That's what affordability is about. I know we have a committed bunch here today, and I thank you for your participation and your attention this morning, and thank you for having me as your kickoff speaker at this very worthwhile event. Thank you.
I don't know about you, I could not have imagined a better keynote speaker than Justin for this day. Please join me in another round of applause for Justin. So I don't know about the rest of you, but our team would tell you that lots of us were taking notes, and folks on our team already have some assignments. Justin, that was remarkable. Some of you have heard me talk about, Justin and I were talking about this over breakfast. Our team adopted a strategy about 2 years ago around R&D, rip off and duplicate. I don't know about you, I found lots of examples here, lots of notes in my portfolio there. I want to mention, because we've got just a minute here, very specifically, the 5 points to which Justin was referring near the end: clear outcomes, quality coaching, affordability, work-based learning, and employer alignment. Those are all the pillars, literally, to the work that's underway at Strata. If you don't have or haven't accessed it, I would really suggest that you get very, very, very familiar with the State Opportunity Index from Strata. There is a printed copy, because yes, I am in some respects a troglodyte, lying next to where I place my computer every day, and it's a rare day, Justin, that I don't look at that, to see where we stand as a state, look to see what other states are doing, and where we might go do some R&D. So thank you for doing that. It is just really a treasure trove. If you're not familiar with it, the State Opportunity Index, you can find it online at Strata's website. By the way, the latest version will be coming up too, because they're in the midst of working on that and reaching even more students to make even richer findings. The last thing that I would close before we break for the various sessions is Justin talked about trust. Again, he and I talked about that at breakfast. We were only together for 45 minutes, but boy, did we pack it in or what, Justin? You know, I think it's really so important the way he talked about there's not just this misperception or sometimes misunderstanding that has resulted from you know, a nature that's just too opaque. I struggle whether all of this is complicated or complex. I think those are different things, but they're one or the other, and it really presents challenges for students and their loved ones to figure this all out, not just the cost side, but just figuring it all out. And certainly very hopeful that things like the pre-admission strategy aim right at that, but it goes deeper to culture. And you know, this is absolutely one of those things we can tackle, because he's helped to give us a roadmap to do so. And it is absolutely deeper than, can I afford this? Is it a good investment? Will the ROI be there? But whether folks trust higher education, I think that ought to be our clarion call. And if it's in other ways, then let's certainly address it. This is one we can address. And I think with the other speakers today, we'll dig into that. I'd close with this. I love that you have your mission up here. I'm very familiar with it, Justin. We talk about our strategy at the Commission all the time. The 60-some folks that I just have the privilege of working with on a daily basis. But we also talk about our culture. And I didn't share this at breakfast, but there are 4 words in our team that we refer to, I don't know, Michelle, every day, multiple times every day. And we use 4 words to describe the culture we're trying to build. I don't know that we'll ever be there, but man, that's our North Star. The second, third, and fourth words are honor, grace, and gratitude, and how we work with other folks. And the first word, and it's engraved on a rock in our office, is the word trust. And you know, I think we do challenge ourselves and should challenge ourselves. I try to every day. Am I earning it? And then am I also just giving it freely, right? That unless you're giving me a reason, I trust you. And I think there's a big call in what Justin had to say, that all the statistics, all the analysis, all the insights, the strategy that comes forth from those leads back to the importance of this is rooted in trust and how we think about our fellow Hoosiers in that manner.